In this Blender video, I'll be demonstrating how to make this copper wire text. For this video, I'll be using Blender version 2.74. Let's start by creating a new project. So from the File menu, select New, and then click on Reload Startup File. Now delete the cube by right-clicking on it to make sure that it's selected, then press X. Now let's add some text. So press Shift-A and select Text. To make the text stand up, let's rotate it on the X-axis. So press R, then X, then 90, then Enter. To edit the text, press Tab to enter edit mode. Now use the backspace key to delete the text and enter in your own text. Now press Tab to return to object mode. Next, let's add some thickness to the text. To do that, click on the Object Data button and set the extrude value to 0.1. Then bevel the edges by entering a bevel depth value. I'm going to use 0.02. Next, convert the text to a mesh by pressing Alt-C and select Mesh from Curve, Meta, Surf, Text. We're doing this because we're going to change the size and position of these two P's, and also because we're going to be adding a wireframe object modifier to the text. This text is going to be sitting on a surface, so let's shrink the height of the two P's and move them up so that their bottom surface is at the same level as the other letters. So press Tab to enter edit mode. Then press 1 on the number pad to switch to front view. This will be easier to do in orthographic mode, so I'm going to press 5 on the number pad to switch to orthographic mode. Next, switch to wireframe view. Now press A once or twice until nothing is selected. Then select the two P's by pressing B for border select and draw a selection box around them. Then scale on the Z-axis by pressing S, then Z, then 0.7, then Enter. Now use the arrow and drag the two P's up until the bottom is even with the other letters. Next, press Tab to return to object mode. I'll rotate the view a little so that we can see the edges. This is a good time to save what I have so far, so from the File menu I'll select Save As. I'm going to name this copper.blend. Now we're going to add some modifiers, so click the Object Modifiers button. Then click Add Modifier and select Remesh. This will replace the mesh with a new one that's more uniform. Since the text is made up of disconnected letters, we need to remove the check mark that's next to Remove Disconnected Pieces. This will allow the Remesh modifier to be applied to all of the letters. Also, add a check mark next to Smooth Shading to make the text smoother. Next, increase the resolution by increasing the Octree depth value. Set the value to 5. We'll be adjusting this value again a little later. Now click Add Modifier and select Decimate. This modifier reduces the number of vertices and it provides 3 different ways to do it. We're going to use Planar. For the angle limit value, make sure that this is set to 5 degrees. Now let's go back and adjust the Remesh modifier's Octree depth value. The goal is to use the smallest value that gives a clean look. If the value is too big, then it can take a long time to process. Also, the more letters that you have, the higher this value would need to be. A value of 6, 7, 8, or 9 should work well in most cases. So I'll try increasing it to 6. The mesh could be a little cleaner in this area, and so I'll try a value of 7. This looks good. Now switch to Solid View. We're going to add a wireframe modifier, so click Add Modifier and then select Wireframe. This modifier changes the mesh into a wireframe, which will be our copper wire. The order of the object modifiers is important, so make sure that the Remesh modifier is on the top, followed by the Decimate modifier, followed by the Wireframe modifier on the bottom. Now to get rid of these spikes that are coming from the text, remove the check mark next to Even Thickness. Now let's make the wireframe a little thicker, so increase the thickness to 0.03. Next, let's add a floor for the text to sit on. So press Shift-A and select Mesh, and then Plane. Then scale it up in size by pressing S, then 100, then Enter. Now press 1 on the number pad to switch to front view and position the floor at the bottom of the text. Now let's set the material for the floor, so click on the Material button. Then click New. Now come up here and change this from Blender Render to Cycles Render. Then click the Use Nodes button. I'm going to keep the diffuse surface type and the white color. Now let's set the material for the wire text. So right-click on it to select it, then click the New button. Set the surface type to Glossy. You may need to scroll to bring the glossy shader into view. Set the roughness value to 0.1 so that it's not too glossy. To set the color, click the Color button and then the Hex button. Enter a value of E7966B. Now let's set up the lighting. So press 3 on the number pad to switch to right side view and zoom out until you can see the lamp. Then right-click on the lamp to select it. Then press G and move it over here. I put it about 1 grid division above the bottom of the text and about 3 grid divisions to the left of the text. Now press 1 on the number pad to switch to front view and drag the lamp over the center of the text. Now we'll set up the type of lamp and the brightness. So click the Object Data button if it's not already selected. Make sure the point lamp is selected and set the size to 3. Then click the Use Nodes button and set the strength to 3000. Next, let's set up the camera view. So press 0 on the number pad. This is the view looking through the camera. I'll zoom in a little. Now I'm going to lock the camera to the view. To do that, press N to open the Properties panel and put a check mark next to Lock Camera to View. Then press N again to close the Properties panel. Now I can zoom, pan, and rotate while looking through the camera. Now I'll set up the view that I'd like to use. To get a preview of how this will render, click the Viewport Shading menu and select Rendered. Everything looks good now, so we're ready to render the final image. So click the Render button. Then open the Sampling section. I'm going to set the number of render samples to 500. The larger this value is, the better the final image will look, but the longer it will take to render. Sometimes you can get unwanted bright speckles in the rendered image. These are sometimes referred to as fireflies. To help prevent this, I'm going to set the clamp indirect value to 1. Now I'm going to save my project. It's a good idea to do this before rendering in case something goes wrong during the rendering process. Now I'll click the Render button. If you want to abort the rendering process before it's done, you can press the Escape key or you can click the X next to the Render progress bar. This is going to take a minute or two to render, so I'll pause the video until it's done. Rendering is finished and this is the final image. To save the image, you can either press F3 or you can click on the Image menu and select Save as Image. I'm going to name this image copper.png. If you want to return to the 3D view, then click this menu and select 3D View. To go back to the rendered image, click the menu and select UV Image Editor. Well, that concludes this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and leave a comment.